It's not about discovering the truth, it's about discovering your truth. As long as the Christian worldview can fit in comfortably and not be offensive inside of the worldview of society and culture, then we're good.
I am unapologetically Christian. I am a Christian pastor.
They are praying to demons. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my bedside, because don't ignore that stuff right there that's peeking out. Hey, we're gonna ignore that. We're just gonna shift that out of the underside of your bed isn't dirty, you're a psychopath. That's where I'm at. Welcome back to my channel. My name's Amy. We talk about all things counterculture. And today we have the same old lie refashioned. Man, Satan is so good at using toxic empathy to trick people that love God into thinking they're doing the loving thing when really they're helping people right into hell. All right? So no sugarcoating it. I'm debating calling this sit down chat salt-coated, because it's like the opposite of sugarcoating things. You know what I mean? Like, just say it. Don't sugarcoat it. Tolerating and softening things up to spoon feed to people isn't always the loving thing to do. But anyways, I digress. Getting into the topic almost immediately, I ran across this video on Protestia on X, which is probably the most smart, intelligent thing I think I've ever done, is follow them on X. And I don't even know if I'm saying their name right. All I know is that I love them. There's a reason why people who aren't Christians eat this stuff up, and it's because it satisfies their desire to reject God and think that they're safe, which isn't true. It's not the loving thing to do, but a lot of things wrong with this video that I'm going to show you. You can comment as I play it what you think it is that I'm going to talk about, and I'll probably talk about everything that you're going to say. But without further ado, let's get into it, because this pastor, so-called pastor, female pastor, thinks that it is the loving thing to do to completely ignore scripture. This is a lie that you're going to hear a lot of times, and this is something that we've been desensitized to as a culture, and specifically, I would say maybe not so much in the more older cultures, older generations, I should say. So like millennial and up, millennials kind of on the fence if it's going to be, but for sure, like a lot of millennials and then most of Gen Z and further down, they buy into this framework of toxic empathy. So it's not about discovering the truth, it's about discovering your truth. And as long as you're being loving by the world's standards, then you're being loving biblically. And as long as the Christian worldview can fit in comfortably and not be offensive inside of the worldview of society and culture, then we're good. But when you start really hunkering down and saying like what scripture says, that's where we have a problem. It seems that this pastor has bought into this lie.
And next, we can disregard the old-time religion that abides disrespect of other religions. I am unapologetically Christian. I am a Christian pastor. Christianity just happens to be my native language. Christianity is the lens through which I understand God and the world around me. Because something that I want you to pay attention to right here, I'm not going to try to interrupt very much, but there's a lot of eyes in this. So this Christianity is very relative to how she feels. My God. It's like equivalent to that. You know, well, my God would never. Or this is how the universe has spoken to me. And I think that it's Christianity. That's not subscribing to the biblical worldview, but this is those little changes in how they say things is incredibly important to pay attention to, because it can completely undermine what they're actually saying. I believe that Jesus is the best picture that I've been presented of what God is, of what God's like. But I also believe that people of other faiths are following God to the best of their knowledge and in ways that are holy and sacred.
Are they though? Holy and sacred. So now instead of God being the authority, we have an even playing field with these other gods and these other religions, because make no mistake, when somebody is praying to another God, there is an exchange happening. I think a lot of times as Christians, we think, okay, well, they're praying to that God and they think that it's that God, but really, they're praying to God. That's one of the ways that we convince ourselves that everybody's saved, right? Universalism, that Jesus died to cover everybody's sin, and however they try to seek him out, that is how they can come to know God. Like really, from the best of their ability, this is what they're doing. The problem is that scripture tells us very blatantly that a lot of times they are praying to demons. Paul tells us that, reference the scripture here. I can't remember the exact scripture, really recently. Because I was myself was like, well, what does God say about universalism? I know that it's not true, but let's do a deep dive so we can talk about it. No, like they are very blatantly praying to demons. And a lot of times we desensitize ourselves from that. We're really uncomfortable with the supernatural. And we'll say, well, there's just God and there's Satan and, there's demons, but they're not here. Like only God and Satan are here. And we just got to pay attention to Satan. And if it's not God, it's no, like there's things going on in the supernatural world. And we're so desensitized to it, specifically here in the United States. One of the ways I realized we're so desensitized to it, and I think why we can justify, they're just trying to seek out God and they're not actually praying to demons, is because if you look into other cultures in other areas of the world, they're very much experiencing the demonic that we don't experience here in the United States. Satan does not really need to come and have a demonic presence here that's super in our face because we're so distracted. We're a different group of people, right? Like what threatens us in our day-to-day life and like what our struggles are completely different than somebody in a different culture. And so that's what like he adjusts for those things. So whenever she says, well, they're just trying to seek him out. Well, scripture says that that's not true. Scripture says that that's not true. God's going to respect the efforts of these other people and them really trying to know him, even though it's not through his son, Jesus, even though it's not through Christ, that he's going to honor it because that's the loving thing to do. Here's the problem. Well, there's a lot of problems. First of all, Christianity teaches something very specific about salvation. It is that you can only obtain salvation as a gift from Jesus Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. He didn't say, unless you're really trying really hard, and I know that you're trying to get to God through this other God that you've created. I know you're trying to get to God through Hinduism. I know you're trying to get to God through Mary. I know you're trying to get to God through, that's probably going to make people mad, through, you name it, except he didn't say that. He said, nobody gets to the Father except through me. It is not about respecting somebody else's efforts to God that should determine what truth is. That is toxic empathy. That is rejecting facts like scripture produces for us and saying actually how we feel trumps that. What makes sense to us trumps that. We get our idea of what the loving thing to do, not from scripture, but from the world. We get it from the world. Whenever you hear somebody say, well, my God would never send people to hell, then your God is not the God of the Bible. And if you're not looking back on scripture to determine what you believe, then you are making God into an image of yourself and you are your own authority. And I know a lot of people who have gone through the deconstructionist movement, the progressive movement will say, well, Amy, that's a false dichotomy. I don't have to follow a book to know Jesus, except that Jesus himself reaffirms scripture. And how do you know who Jesus is? From scripture, which means that you are getting your information, or at least parts of your information, from scripture. You're picking and choosing, meaning that you determine what truth is. You determine what is valid and applicable to your life or what makes sense to you. You allow scripture to flow downstream from your already set understanding of what you think is right and true, but the opposite is true. We need to submit ourselves to what we know of Jesus Christ and not what we feel he should be. It's not about honoring somebody else's truth and saying that the loving thing to do from God would be to honor that. It's about honoring what God says is true. Can we respect other people in their religions? Yeah, absolutely. This is not a call to hatred, okay? This isn't a call to go and burn down the synagogues. It's not a call to go and burn down the mosques, okay? Because respecting other people is a way that we show love to God. You can show love and compassion to people without affirming them in their false sense of truth. Biggest lie that we've been sold as Christians is that in order to be loving, which is the highest law, God said, as Christ in the flesh, love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. How do we love our neighbor? Well, we just have to affirm them in everything. And whenever we have to affirm them, we sub out love and we sub in niceness, not stirring up conflict, not being controversial, and we become passive and we call it love. Because we can say you are believing a lie and you're believing that this thing is going to save you, not affirming them in that and loving them and saying, but you can accept Christ just like I could accept Christ because of Christ, not anything that we do. Anything that you do that contradicts scripture cannot be deemed loving because it goes against what God says is good. Ephesians 4:15 tells us to speak the truth in love. It doesn't say sub out the truth to be loving, because if you can't speak the truth to somebody, then you're not loving them. I know we live in a time where tolerance is often accepted as love because psychology around us, the increasing cultural climate that just wants to affirm, be loving. You know, it's all about not challenging anybody's ideas. Everything it like centers around this, like, what is your truth? Whatever makes you happy. And we are dealing with a religion. And if we have not come to that realization as Christians, we think, oh, you know, they just don't believe in God. They don't follow religion. Yeah, they do. It's the religion of self. And even if we wouldn't think them as a selfish human being, any other thing that they serve that is not God is a religion, because it comes with its own set of beliefs, it comes with its own set of values, and it comes with its own set of how you should live. Dying to ourselves daily is being obedient, but even our obedience does not get us into heaven. Now, if we have true faith, it will produce that obedience, and it will be a reflection of our genuineness and of our salvation in Jesus Christ. But that in and of itself is not what saves us. It says in Ephesians, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and that it is not of yourself. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." It's so beautiful. It's such an amazing thing to get to go and not boast about, but to go and just be appreciative of, to stand in awe that even though I am wretched, God sent his son for me. His son sacrificed himself and his own perfection for me so that I could be eternally in the presence of him. Man, I just so look forward to that day. We cannot compromise on the truth, because it is actually one of the more, if not the most unloving thing to do, to tell them in an effort to be tolerant and nice that they actually aren't in danger of spending an eternity without Jesus and without God. It's another reason why it's really important to know our Bible, to know scripture, to know what does God say, so that when somebody comes up to us and they say something like this pastor did in a way that seems understandable, seems, you know, loving, it seems like the nice, compassionate thing to do, that we have something to put it up against and say, okay, well, but what does God say? Because when Paul says that people will come in the end telling itching ears what they need to hear, telling itching ears what they want to hear, rather, it doesn't say about these things that you're going to totally be able to notice, the theology is just going to be absolutely black and white, you know, like you're not, no, he doesn't say that. He says they're going to come with teaching that sounds reasonable. Have you heard like your pastor say something like this? Are you seeing this online? I'm seeing it online rev up quite a bit, especially in the deconstruction progressive Christianity, and maybe not just the progressive Christianity movement, but the more worldly movement, where I'm like, I could see that there's some Christians in there, but they are definitely swallowing some lies, and I think that they are in danger of compromising the truth to the detriment of others. That's what I'm seeing a little bit of. Go ahead and drop any of the questions that you have in the comments below. If you have ideas about some topics that you want to hear from me, be sure to put those there too. Like I said, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and then hit the notification bell. Also, you can go follow me over on Instagram. I post almost every day. I take weekends off, but other than that, I'm showing up. That's all we have for today. I'll see you next time. Bye.